You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today. Welcome to the Fader Interview. I'm Alex Robert Ross, editorial director of The Fader. Not one music writer in a million years could have predicted that the Sarah Midori Perry who became the face of the bubblegum pop trio Kero Kero Bonito in 2011 would be making ear-splitting digital hardcore in 2022. But in June, she debuted her new project Cryalot with a track called Hell Is Here, unveiling a whole new area code in her emotional range. Hell Is Here and the rest of the 5 songs on Cryalot's debut EP Icarus, out tomorrow, are deeply personal, detailing what Perry has referred to as the first time in her life she experienced sustained anxiety and depression. But Cryalot is not a solo endeavor. Joining Perry on her vision quest is Jennifer Walton, a DJ, drummer, and experimental producer whose devotion to all things extreme played a key role in the crafting of KKB's third record, Time and Place. If 2014's Intro Bonito was the blueprint to the group's Edenic digiverse, Time and Place brought the band crashing back into the meat space. And Cryalot's Icarus is a new vision of this post-lapsarian world. Mythology was one of the many topics on the table when Sarah and Jennifer spoke to the Fader's Raphael Helfand at the start of their release week. They also discussed Minecraft concerts, Pampas Grass Angel Wings, the Fast and Furious franchise, and how Sarah learned to scream like Linkin Park's Chester Bennington.
I was just talking to Sarah about how I talked to the whole band around Time and Place, which I know that you had a pretty big hand in too, Jenny. I think that album made a lot of people, at least like people who are paying attention, sort of reimagine KKB. Can you tell me a little bit how you ended up joining forces to create a new sound for that album?
So yeah, I mean, me and Sarah, I was in the live band for Time and Place, and just spent so much time on the road and shared a hotel room every night. And I think just through kind of listening to the same music in the van and talking so much, we just kind of fused brains at a point. And then midway through tour, Sarah kind of started talking about the idea of making music and making music together. And so when I got back, just started demoing stuff, sending things back and forth. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was DJing a lot outside of that, a lot of hardcore and more gabbery kind of things, which I think Sarah's own DJ stuff really resonated with. So I think that link of kind of noise music and then also extreme dance music stuff really worked, crossed that bridge almost. Yeah,
I'm wondering though, even before all that, initially, Jenny, what drew you to KKB's sound in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was kind of a fan of KKB before I ever started working with them, just through mutual friends and stuff. It's that kind of extremity of pop music and pushing it to the nth degree that I really resonated with from the start. And so yeah, I mean being able to get involved in Time and Place stuff, which was that kind of bridge to more I don't want to say noisy sides, worked really well.
It was really nice, even before writing music with Jenny, we had this kind of foundation of I guess friendship or kind of being on tour together, spending all the time together, and kind of we had that foundation before we even went into the studio. So for me, the Cryalot project, the music side, making music, I wanted to write personal songs, way more personal. So I felt really comfortable when I got into the studio with Jenny and kind of pouring my heart out, and it felt like a really nice thing to have that before we went into the studio.
Yeah, Jenny, you said something interesting, which is that something that maybe connected the two of you was sort of the musical extremes, the harsher noise and the really, really super bubblegum, pure optimism. I guess you're saying that you sort of connected through them being like sort of like those extreme poles?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I like obviously like sonically they are like completely different, but I think there is a huge link between the people that I think that are into kind of that more extreme pop stuff and into noise music at the same time. It is about that kind of like pushing things to the nth degree. And what I've always been really fascinated with is like, what is that link between like, how far can you push like pop sound design while still keeping it like commercial-ish and like keeping it digestible? And so I think that is the kind of link, right? Yeah, I don't know. It is funny, like, because yeah, like I mean the fan bases are always like interesting to see what their kind of like wider taste is outside of that. But yeah, I mean like with Cryalot, it was really fun to just like kind of purposely play with that and like really kind of take like pop structure and like really like actively see how far we can kind of go.
Sarah, I know that you guys have done some stuff with like I watched the 100 gecs Minecraft concert that you guys did over COVID. I'm wondering like who else you see sort of as like your contemporaries in that kind of realm.
I mean, it's really always really hard for me when I get asked questions like, oh, who's like in the same universe as you? I don't know. What do you think, Jenny?
I mean, there is like a super vibrant kind of like SoundCloud scene almost with like Hamara and Umru, Clark, Kavari. It like there is like definitely a scene there of like ultra sound designy pop adjacent stuff. But I mean, it's tricky. I mean like because a lot of the stuff I pull from is just like, you know, commercial pop cuts that are like super weird, and I think it's always really funny when people kind of draw this link about like pop being one thing and then like experimental music being another, because like on the big albums of like most if not all like commercial pop stars, there are really weird things going on that are like super exciting to me, and I think it's pulling from that world as well as like obviously the like post the SoundCloud like world stuff, if that makes sense.
We mentioning that like the Minecraft concert and some of like the stuff that you guys did during like peak COVID. How did an event like that come about, and like what was it like performing like on a digital stage like that?
Yeah, it was definitely a new experience. Like I did a few with KKB. It's up on YouTube. Like we did Minecraft and then Secret Sky, SPF 420. It was really fun. Like to kind of try out like doing that kind of stuff. It definitely doesn't beat playing like a live gig, but it was like fun to kind of like add like different clips of like something that's like related to the music. It's kind of like editing videos. It's like more like you can add stuff like on top of you, like a video of you performing. So that was really fun. Yeah. And the funny thing with Minecraft, there was like too many people on the server or like something. I couldn't join the Minecraft gig. So, and I think Gus and Jamie were having a problem as well. So they had like a stage on Minecraft, and when it was KQB, like none of us was on stage. So we physically couldn't make it to the Minecraft stage. So it was like, that was kind of funny. Like the fans were there like trying to watch our show, and they can hear the music, but they didn't actually see us.
It did some really funny things as well to just the music that was being played live, because I did a couple of like kind of streaming show things, and you end up with this like people were playing the most extreme music possibly imaginable because you don't have to dance. So everyone's just like sitting down and like watching or like just listening to stuff at home. So you end up with this like speedcore, like 220 BPM, just like sheer kick drum like music happening for so long, because there's no like, you don't need to warm up, you don't need to dance, it's just like happening at you. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, like it did open like some really crazy doors to like different stuff.
Moving forward to Cryalot, I guess like Sarah, up to this point, you pretty much, in terms of like releasing music, it pretty much been exclusively with KKB, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You talked about how like you're sort of throwing ideas back and forth on the tour bus for time and place, but like what made you like fully decide to like write, a personal album for yourself?
Yeah, I guess it's like linked to kind of how the Cryalot project started. It actually started from an Instagram account called Cryalot. And it was around, I think, 2018. Like I was going through like this dark phase, a dark period in my life. And I just kind of started off by wanting to make a space for myself to kind of like express that. And when I got to like naming the Instagram account. I was like, what do I name it? And I was crying a lot at that time. So I was like, okay, Cryalot. And it's kind of like my way of like taking back control of like those moments and kind of hoping to like not just let those tears go to waste. I really wanted to do something creative off of it, but I still didn't know what. So I just made the Instagram account and I started posting stuff. And then like hanging out with Jenny on tour and like listening to her solo stuff, and I was really drawn to kind of like this like, I don't know how to explain it, like this like darkness she has in her like music, and it just felt right. So that's when I was like, oh, I really want to make music and make it like a bit more personal. Yeah, it just felt right to write with Jenny, and just kind of like went from there. Yeah.
Well, we'll get back to some of the record's more personal themes, but first I wanted to talk about just Hell Is Here, which feels like, I mean, it's in the middle of the album and it's came out first, and it just feels like the centerpiece.
I see an angel in my dream. They are sitting next to me. Fairy birds like ashes in the sky. Look into angels' eyes. I see a clearer sky. Looking into angels' eyes. I see a clearer sky. Crystallize the pain. Nothing is the same. Hell is here. Hell is here to stay. Crystallize the pain. Nothing is the same. Hell is here.
So I know this album is about the story of Icarus, but like this track and this video also, like I think for me, brought to mind like the story of Lucifer, who, was an angel before he rebelled and banished to hell. So I'm wondering if like you see overlap between those stories, and if you like identify with that Lucifer character at all as well.
Yeah, I guess like, yeah, it is in a way. I never really thought of it like that, but it is quite Luciferish and like hellish. Like, yeah, with that track, from when I was writing it, that was the first, like, because the EP's not really about, the whole EP is not about like the dark period in my life, but that, I would say that song is about the dark period I was going through. It was the first song I wrote. It's a song about like defeat, like how like reality can like suddenly turn into hell, and that feeling you can't get out of it. So I was kind of playing with that theme, and like looking back at it, almost feels like some kind of like hellish diary entry from that time in my life. So yeah, that's what Hell Is Here is about, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, musically that track is so much fun. I'd like to hear a bit more about the process, because it feels like it's almost like two songs woven together. I'm wondering where the quiet part and the quieter part and the really heavy part, were they both like conceptualized at the same time? And did you know that you wanted to have sort of both of those songs in one song, or did one come first?
Yeah, in terms of like lyrically, it's kind of like, when you're like feeling horrible, like feeling bad, it's not like you always constantly feel like shit. It's like you're kind of like, some moments you feel like you're out of it, but then you suddenly go back in. So it's kind of like I wanted to play with that feeling of like coming out of it, then going back in, and it's kind of like a wave. So I wanted to kind of sound like two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sonically as well, yeah, it was super intentional. Like, there's a few things that happen that, like, were really, like, formulated to, like, feel like the rug was being pulled out of you, and, like, having these kind of, like, two sonic universes. It was a really fun song to write, because it is fun to, like, truly play with, like, the physical space, because it's so dense in the choruses. It's just like a wall of noise, or like a big wave washing over you, but then, like, having those kind of verses to kind of, like, you're kind of like reeling, or hopefully still reeling from the kind of like intensity of the chorus. And like, I mean, my favorite part of it entirely is like, I think it's on the second chorus drops, and it comes in like a beat late or a beat early, and it just feel like, when I did that, it was fully like, okay, like this is fun, because it was just fully like trying to like body slam you into like this different world. And yeah, I mean, it was like also a really fun experience, just like sonically, to try and kind of like play with like black metal aesthetics without just fully like pulling out guitars and like fully pulling out all this stuff, and like trying to see what actually makes that sound like that in like a different kind of like sonic language type of thing. Yeah, I know, it was so fun. But it was definitely when we kind of had those very stark contrast that it felt like the song came alive. Like, I think you need the grounding of the verses to kind of contextualize the intensity of the chorus. Yeah.
Speaking of the black metal aesthetics, I know from following you on your regular, on your main Instagram, Sarah, I know you've been like experimenting with your death metal scream for a little while. Can you talk about like what went into practicing your technique and any vocalists you drew inspiration from? Because I think you nailed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that the screams, I always wanted to try it. And I think like the first time I got the opportunities to do that was when we recorded Only Acting. I remember like Gus kind of locked me in a room with a mic and he was like, go crazy. And then I guess that's the first time I actually screamed. And then like through touring, I was doing it like every night on stage. And then I kind of like got the technique of not killing my voice, but still managing to like scream. And then, yeah, and I really enjoyed it. And it's something I really wanted to like do more of. So when Hell Is Here came along, I was like, yeah, more screams. I grew up kind of listening to like Melt Banana or Linkin Park. Like I remember listening to like Chester Bennington like do his like insane like vocals, and I guess that's the first time I experienced like that kind of singing. And yeah, now I can just turn it on really quickly, which is kind of funny.
Do you have any tips for aspiring singers who might want to dabble in black metal screaming?
I think like the hardest thing is doing it. I think like switching from like just suddenly screaming is like a really like unnatural thing unless you're like really emotional, or like kind of like practicing like switching to that scream and like not fearing it and kind of letting go. I think that's like the hardest thing to do if you're getting into it like the first time. Yeah, I think just go for it, and yeah, it'll all be fine.
I think like maybe the easiest way, maybe it's a bit reductive, but to split this record up would be into 3 parts, with Touch the Sun and Hurt Me representing Act 1, and then Hell Is Here sort of Act 2, and Labyrinth and See You Again are the final act. Using that framework, it seems like the first part sort of represents the flight up to the sun, or again, if we were to look at it in Paradise Lost terms, like Eden, and then Hell Is Here is like falling to the sea, and then sort of the final 2 songs are like that period after the fall, like learning to like live in a world post all that. You think that's like a fair way of looking at it?
No, definitely. That's like interesting you picked up on that. I definitely feel like this EP is like, it's like a journey. It's like, I wanted to sound like it's like a story. I wanted to kind of like sing about like all aspects of the Icarus story. And it's like my attempt of rewriting the kind of interpretation of the story Icarus. Because I think like people, the common interpretation is like a cautionary tale, but I wanted to like more like celebrate the courage of Icarus. But I didn't want it to be like, oh, it's all gonna be fine and everything's gonna be fine. We're not gonna die. I wanted to be like, yeah, you might like fail and have success as well, and like all of that is something to be celebrated about. So like you said, like Touch the Sun is about like that kind of like almost like childish feeling of like feeling invincible, like you can like do anything and it'll be fine. But then there's like songs like Hell Is Here. It's about failure and like hell, like feeling like when things are not going how you planned. And then like songs like See You Again is about like, I wanted to kind of like play on like how people like use Icarus as like, well, he died, he flew too close to the sun and he died, and that's a really bad thing. But I wanted to be like, well, yeah, he died, but like his story, he's immortalized through his story, like people still talking about the story. So I kind of wanted to be like, well, yeah, it's the end, but is it the end? Kind of like, yeah.
I think as well with like just with See You Again specifically, it was really fun like to draw out that kind of like folky, passing down like folk canon type of thing towards the end, especially like having like this campfire like round energy and like bringing it back to that storytelling of like being part of like a wider narrative of the kind of like myth, but also of like, yeah, the whole story that we're trying to say. Yeah.
I was going to save talking about See You Again for later, but since we're here now, I'm curious. And making a song called See You Again to close out the album, you're fighting from behind, because there's already a very good See You Again by Mr. Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth from the Fast and Furious franchise. Are you guys fans of the franchise.
I've seen a few.
I feel like I just got
films,
body
but-
slammed by that.
I never actually listened
Like, you're
to
just
the
gonna
track.
throw that in, and that's so hard.
Yeah, that's my gotcha question right there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, how can we compete? Seriously, like, it all comes back to Charlie Puth.
The other interesting thing about that song, the first, the intro to it in Japanese, is that from like a specific version of the Icarus story? So I know you talked about like how you first learned it from like a songbook in school. Is that from that, or is it something like a poem you wrote based on that?
Yeah, the whole EP is definitely inspired by that song. I wanted to kind of like write kind of like my take on it after like many years of after kind of listening to that song and being inspired by it, and it's kind of like my take on it. I wanted to do it in Japanese because I quite like it when, I don't know, I wanted to sound like mysterious and like quite like you can't really like put your finger around like what it could be, but like I don't know, I kind of wanted to add a mystery to it as well. And I think like Japanese it sounds really like pretty or poetic. I can't think of a word, but it sounds like very like mysterious. There's like so many words you can use for like one thing, so it's kind of like really fun to use when you're writing like a poem. So I kind of wanted to like use Japanese for that.
Was the original song that you learned the story of Icarus from, was that in Japanese or was that in a British school?
Yeah, it's a Japanese school. I actually recently found it on YouTube. It sounds really old. I was like almost like it was like a hit of nostalgia. I was like, whoa, I actually found it on YouTube. And it's crazy how much I remembered the lyrics. I could like still sing along to it. But yeah, I was like in Japan, and I think I was around like 7 or something when I first encountered it at school.
The sun is setting between two towers. It's time for you to come with me. 僕たちは永遠で、僕たちは自由で、青い空は無限の可能性を秘めている。海の向こう側をくぐり抜けて新しい旅立ちが始まる。さよなら、きっとまた会えるよ。そう言って天使たちは僕を送り出した。
I think the one interview I've read from this cycle is the one you did with Rolling Stone when Hell is Here came out, and you already talked about this a little bit here, but you said you wrote that song sort of like in the depths of like the first real period of like anxiety and depression that you've had, and that making this album sort of was a way of writing through that. Without going into any more detail than you feel comfortable with, can you talk about like the headspace that you're in and like how you pushed through that to turn it into something constructive, because that's not an easy thing to do?
Yeah, it's like exactly how Hell is Here sounded. Like at that time, it was really like looking back at it, it really was like, I guess like when you go through like anxiety or depression, it's like it's like a wave. Like you feel like hell some days, and like you feel like you're like fine, and some days, and it's kind of like this thing, it's like a wave, and you feel like so like not in control of your life. I think like for the first time in my life, I didn't find joy in creating. So it's kind of like when I started this project, I wanted to create something from those moments to kind of like push myself and like to kind of find that joy again in like creation. And I think like the Icarus story is like a philosophy of life I always try to live up to, but I feel like that moment is like that period in my life is like I forgot about it. So I kind of wanted to like dive into that and kind of remind myself of those moments by writing an EP about that. But I also didn't want the EP to be like just about this dark period. I wanted to kind of like write the Icarus theme and not kind of dwell too much into that, kind of like pull myself out of it almost. Yeah.
And Jenny, I know obviously you've worked with a lot of different artists and done like a lot of different sorts of remixes, but like from what I've heard, like your primary mode is sort of more intense and noisy. I'm wondering how you approach like the rest of the album. Hell is Here is obviously a very noisy track, but like I'd say pretty much both sides of it on the other sides are like pretty lush harmonically and have a lot of like soft, longer passages. So how did you approach like writing lusher, quieter, more harmonic music here.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think when you're releasing music under your own name, which I do, it kind of like becomes like super personal as well, and like the noisier stuff and like is like super dear to me, and definitely is like where my base is, but there's like a lot of other stuff that was happening as well, and so like to be able to like work with Sarah and like really like push the boat out, and also have Sarah like truly like trust kind of wherever I wanted to take it sonically, was like really rewarding. And it wasn't like, oh boy, here comes the happy song, I better really pull out. Like those kind of like writings on those moments were like so fun and easy. Yeah, and I think it was just that experiment of play, really. It's just like always like playing with texture and playing with extremity or playing with like song structure, and especially kind of having that like space with time and with the release to like really experiment with other people and getting to like bring in friends to record like bits of cello and stuff. And I mean, like really, I think the main thing that makes the EP sound the way it does is that we recorded it all in like my box room home studio, which I think really lends the kind of vibe to it, and especially like where Sarah was, especially like relating to the last question, like we were both like feeling pretty whatever. So like being in like a relatively safe environment where you can like experiment and that isn't tied to like paying studio fees. You can just like rock up one day and be like, let's try this like crazy vocal move. I mean, like I was going to bring up earlier, but like all of the screaming for like Hell Is Here was redubbed in one day on the hottest day of the year with Sarah like under a duvet. And that does lead to like a certain intensity of performance. Like Sarah like didn't complain once and then comes out of this duvet like absolutely drenched. And that's metal, by the way. But yeah, and I think it's like that's what gives it the sound of and also the ability to kind of like constantly refine and constantly dive in, like because all the songs are like super dense. I think that's it. Basically, it's just time and like playing around, and like I think there is an intensity in the others, and it's the same production technique to a degree. Sorry, and it isn't similar to like remixing in the same way of like drawing on what you think the other person wants and finding that balance. And it was like super collaborative in that way. Yeah.
Let me touch the sun, wanna have it all. I don't care if I fall, I accepted it all. You can't break me, try ban me down. You turn my wings to black. Is that all you got? Is that all you got? Let me touch the sun, wanna have it all.
I want to talk a little bit about like the visual side of the record. Sarah, I know that you are pretty serious about costume work and about makeup work. You got to do some pretty cool things here. Can you tell me about the process of like creating like a new look for around this whole release, and like also especially for making the wings to the Touch the Sun and Hell Is Here videos?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun. Like, I think the whole world building thing is something I really enjoy doing. Like, I almost like sometimes think like I write music so I can kind of delve into this world building. It's like I feel like it's the visual side of things super important to me. Like with the wings as well, it would have been much easier to just like get like these like angel feather pretty wings and then call it a day. But I really wanted the wings to be like I collaborated with my mom to make I think there was like 3 wings in total we made for this project, and I was kind of like wanting to make like these wings that kind of look human made. There were like the Hell Is Here wings is made out of like pampas grass, which was like my mum's neighbor kindly donated to us. She was about to cut it and my mum was like, don't cut those, we need them. And like and then like the Touch the Sun was made out of these sticks, these like branches that fell from the tree, again from the garden. And I kind of wanted to like make like wings that like maybe Icarus would have won, like something like kind of human made and quite like DIY looking, like looks like you can't use it to fly. And yeah, like even with the like the music video side of stuff as well, like we worked with this amazing director Josh Homme, and we kind of like built the world together. And like the first video we shot, Hell Is Here, like I was really inspired by how claustrophobic like artists' studios look, like especially like like studios like Francis Bacon's art studio, and there's something kind of really scary about it. And I think my personal art studio kind of resembles that in a way. So I kind of wanted to recreate like an art studio, fill it up with like all the paintings and sketches I've been like holding on to for like years. It's all like kind of like my personal work, and kind of like keeping it really DIY, like keeping it very like personal to me.
I was looking through like the Cryalot Instagram this morning, and I saw that you posted like a clip from Labyrinth, from the David Bowie movie. Is there a connection between the song and the movie, and like will we get some visuals related to that?
Oh yeah, that's so funny you picked up on that. I was watching that film when I was like writing the song. Yeah, and it's kind of like a classic. I was like trying to like when I was writing Labyrinth, I wanted to kind of narrate that feeling of like being trapped in like somewhere, but then you still kind of like have hope about like escaping, or hope of a better place, and then kind of going from there. And I was watching that film. It's a great film. Oh, and the main character's called Sarah as well, which is quite scary.
I guess back to like the first part of the album, like in the context, I guess we were talking about with like the 3 acts, maybe the first 2 tracks like sort of feel like retrospective, like you're looking back, like maybe like on a more innocent time in your life and career. Do you think of that early part of your career as like sort of like flying close to the sun?
I don't really think of it like that. It's just like this project is like the Icarus thing. I always wanted to like do something about it. It's kind of like my personal obsession, and the Cryalot project just seemed like a perfect time to kind of explore that. And I think I'm still flying towards the sun. Hasn't stopped yet. And yeah, it's kind of like great to think back now how like this project wouldn't happen if I didn't go through those like dark moments, but now it's like linked to something positive, so kind of like my master plan has worked. So it's quite like, yeah, it's kind of something very positive for me now. So I guess I did come out of hell, and now on to the next. That
was Sarah Midori Perry and Jennifer Walton talking to the Fader's Raphael Helfand. Cryalot's new EP, Icarus, is out tomorrow, September 2nd, via AWOL. The Fader interview is engineered by Tony Giambroni. The executive producer is Alex Robert Ross, and the associate producer is Raphael Helfand. We'd like to thank Walton Audio for providing our microphones. You can find them online at lautenaudio.com. And we'd like to thank James Ivey for providing our intro music. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you left a 5-star rating and review. If you like listening to The Fader, good news. We're now on the new live radio app, AMP. Download it from the App Store now. And keep an eye on thefader.com for essential music news, interviews, and essays. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Fader Interview. Goodbye until then. You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today.